All right, part five of Little Big by John Crowley. What I seem to be doing now is I listen to it during the day, and then I come home. I sit out on my swing in my backyard in the dark, and I kind of just flip through the different tracks, the four different tracks, an hour long, kind of flip forward and forward and forward, and listen to little snippets just to remind myself all the many things that have happened during this section. So, what the hell's happened during this section? I think we start off with Huxbill, the mage woman, who, let's just talk about her. Um, she meets a young gentleman down on his luck who's just taken up drinking. Turns out it's Oberon, who, in exchange for letting him into the garden of the Drinkwater building, which he's related to. Uh, she he tells her about the tarot cards and the book of architecture that Drinkwater water wrote, which is sort of all about the how it gets bigger the further in you go until you get to Fairyland. And he gives her instructions how to get to the farm. And it actually turns out that Hawksbill is a distant cousin that Violet had an affair and had a kid before she went off. And Hawksbill side of the family is related there, so she's sort of related. So they're delighted, and she kind of pumps him for information. She gets information. She gets God. She takes a certain bone of a cat, which has to be boiled alive. It's like gross, and by experimenting, taking one bone after another, putting it in her mouth, she gets one that's invisible. So she's able to infiltrate uh, the uh, the guy. Oh, Aikenberry, Aiken whatever, who is the awakened Barbossa, um, Frederick Barbossa, the Emperor, um, who's come again, who's apparently is going to be used by the fairies as on a war against mankind for unthinkingly driving them out of the world. And he gets to them, and it's like, it's like, I want to be your advisor because the noisy rod and gun club, they're going to try and use you, make you their puppy, like that pope that made you do it. And he's like, don't call me your highness. And I don't know, I've never met the pope, and but obviously he has. And so she becomes kind of in his thing. Meanwhile, Oberon, we kind of flash back and forth back to him, just like, I can't find her at all. And then he starts seeing her everywhere, and like all the faces on the street, but they're, of course, they all switch back to other women afterwards, until he meets this woman in a bar, and it's like, it's her, and it's like, wow. Oh, actually, no, first there's the heartbreaking scene where he goes to that place where there's like, through magic of acoustics, if you stand in one corner, and then a person can stand way over on the other side, but if you can whisper to each other, because somehow the acoustics do that. But he meets her in a bar, and it's her. And he goes home, and he gets very drunk, and he gets home, and he's slept with her. But it turns out that it's not her, it's her brother, who I believe is transsexual, or is very much, he still seems to be very much Sylvie. Sylvie, did I say Sylvie? And but it isn't her. There's a little bit of like, oh, but in some ways it's like, no, he's quite a nice guy. Bruno, I think it is. And he does end up going home, but he takes the bus, doesn't walk, which they do note. and he's with his family and his mother, Daily Alice, and he cries, and he really really does cry, and he has a kind of a interesting conversation with his father where they find out, like, oh, I was spying on you because I thought you knew stuff, but in the end it turns out no, didn't know stuff, that both of them were clueless, and both of them, like, do you believe in fairies? It's like, no. Well, and they don't obfuscate, do you believe in them? It's like, no, I don't. So in the universe of this book, they most definitely do exist. um, and so he ends up going back to the city. Oberon, he goes back to the city, and he kind of comes upon, he's asked for his place back from George Mouse, and he gives him his place back, and he tells him this story about the fireworks and how the fireworks are packed with, one firework can be packed with more fireworks in it, with more fireworks in it, with more fireworks within it, which sounds very much like kind of the whole fairyland thing. And George tells him this weird story about how, there's the three lilacs. there's there's the real lilac, there's the one that got swapped, and then there's the imaginary lilac, his which is Oberon's imaginary friend. And Sophie arrived at his door one day and said, "This is your daughter, but it's not your daughter. It's the fake one." And indeed, he looks at the kid, and it's not a little girl, a little baby girl. It's like this aged 45-year-old. Like if you put a cigar in its mouth, and you'd be like, "Hey, what you doing?" And the kid gets away, and he goes upstairs, and she's like, oh God, stop it, don't let it get to the fire." And he says, like, he gets to the fire, it is at the fire, and it's popping coals in its mouth, and it's like lighting it up like a jack-o'-lantern, and he knocks the kid away from the fire. And then he gets an idea. He fills up a shovel with coals, and he lures the kid up to his special room where he's got all the fireworks. It's like all lined with asbestos and stuff like that. It says, hey, hey, throws the asbestos, he throws the shovel full of coals into the room, and he kicks the kid into the room, and he slams the door, and he runs down and says, "We got to get out!" And all the fireworks go out, and it explodes, and he's like, "Oh my God, you killed her! You killed her!" It's like, but that wasn't her. It's like, but you killed her. And it's like, oh, it's something about Lilac. And then we flash to Lilac. I think the real Lilac with the fairies. Um, and says, like, you go, you sleep now, you sleep, and he puts her in leaves to sleep, and this underworld gets, suddenly expands and gets gigantic, and she's so puissant, which I think is really powerful, really full of ah. And it's like, that's where we are with the story. And now we're going to get to the Parliament of Fairies, where I guess the whole battle of whatever kind there is going to happen. And I've probably left out a whole bunch of stuff. I think at the end of the last section, I was talking about, oh, is that Sylvie that notices the zodiac? But actually, no, that was Hawksbill who noticed that the zodiac had changed. So let's add that addendum on to my thing. But yeah, yeah, it's a strange rush of a book. Strange, rich, confusing, hard to keep in my mind. It's very hard to keep in my mind. I don't know if, like, it's the kind of book where you think, am I supposed to be able to keep this in my mind, or is it just supposed to kind of rush through, and I'm supposed to, like, kind of thrill to it? Because maybe it's just because I'm doing it on the audio. Maybe it's really stretching the limits of what I feel like I could do in audio. I feel like I'm getting an experience, probably getting a different experience than I would if I'd actually read it, which isn't something I'd say about all books. There's some books, like I've been listening to a lot of Anthony Trollope, and that seems very kind of clear, and I'm getting a pretty solid thing of the Trollope novels. I don't feel like I'm missing out. I don't know if, though, I really don't think I could actually read this book, or if I did, I'd need to be really, really focused, and it would take me forever to read. Yeah. So, well, I'm I'm on part 5 and there's only part 6 to go, so it's too late to turn back now. At least for this reading. I do still have the book, the tiny paperback book, so if I ever wanted to read it, I could. I don't know if I would. May not be that much up of my alley that I would want to give it another shot that way. I don't know. Well, those are my thoughts for tonight, so I will leave you there as I ponder in my own garden, which is indeed bigger on the inside than it is on the out. Ooh.